Hi and welcome to Capacity TV again. I'm Jason McGee-Abe, Editor-in-Chief here at Capacity Media. I'm joined today by Michael Wheeler, EVP of the Global IP Network at NTT. Michael, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So lots of exciting stuff going on at the moment. In particular, on the 1st of October, it was announced that NTT Communications and your business unit had all joined the new company NTT. So first and foremost, what are the benefits that you expect to see with that integration, and how have things gone since then?
Yeah, so it's definitely been an exciting year for us, and the lead up to it was a lot of work, and there's still a lot of work still to do with the integration, but NTT Limited as a company is pulling together really about 28 different companies and brands and rolling them under one umbrella on a global level. And so having NTT Limited be based in London and having the management team be really global in scope and nature is a huge benefit and an outcome of the process. So there's still, like I said, a lot of work to do, but we're pretty excited about where the direction of the overall company is, and pulling all the service sets, the portfolio that exists there together, and really putting it again under one brand versus a couple dozen different brands is really going to be, I think, a positive thing for the marketplace.
So for all your customers watching this interview, with all those changes going on, are there any differences in the operations and the management of the global IP network?
Actually, the global IP network is going to remain mostly as it is. I think that for us, there's really no operational or managerial changes. The biggest benefit, from my perspective, will be the fact that we'll be able to work with the go-to-market organizations that were particularly part of the Dimension Data business in the past, and having those things being pulled together will create a much more cohesive environment where we'll be able to have those teams presenting our offering and our services, as well as lots of other services to those customers that they've had in the enterprise space around the world. And so that's a change. I wouldn't call it operational. It's really more on the go-to-market side, and it's something I think you'll see a lot of people see a benefit from.
Okay. And talking about services and benefits, you've spoken extensively about networks security and especially the threat of DDoS attacks and mitigating those kind of attacks and threats. What are you seeing at the moment when it comes to those attacks and that trend? And what sort of services does NTT have in helping to combat them?
So from a network security perspective, we continue to see that kind of threatscape, as we would call it, evolve over time. It ebbs and flows a bit. There's certainly still volumetric attacks that are large scale in regards to volume, but we also have been seeing a much higher number of attacks that last for very short durations. So the size may not be huge, but the frequency of the attacks has increased quite a lot. But in many cases, there'll be attacks that only last maybe for 5 or 10 minutes. So instead of seeing attacks that last for hours and hours or long periods of a day, we're seeing a much higher number of small, shorter attacks that are also utilizing a packet per second based structure versus just pure volume of bandwidth. So again, those are just the way in which the people that are generating those attacks are doing, and they have a purpose in mind. And so it's our job as a provider for our customers and for our network to protect against those, whatever those gyrations are and changes and how the threats are occurring. We have a number of tools we provide to customers from a black holing perspective. We offer kind of standard black holing as well as selective black holing. But we also offer a full product set. Our DDoS protection services product set does everything from auto mitigation all the way down to a fairly base level, which allows customers to set up an access control list structure and essentially eliminate routes that are being announced to them that way. So, ultimately, there's no one single solution for addressing security. You have to look at a multiple different set of options. Some customers have infrastructure in-house that they'll use and kind of add that to what we're providing them. Some customers will outsource to other third parties, which is also an option. And then some people will refer to us basically as their primary source of protection. But whatever the case is for that customer is kind of how they need to address the right tool sets for them to address the attacks that they're having occur.
And with the future trends, technologies, obviously kind of the proliferation of connected devices, IoT-enabled devices as well, what can be done in order to decrease the security risks when it comes to that world as well? Yeah,
it's a huge challenge. It's going to become a bigger challenge as more and more devices are connected to the internet, especially on a global level. What can be done is a big question. I think the reality is a lot of the IoT devices are not the most sophisticated devices in many cases. And they're small things like, nanny cams or Ring doorbells or, Nest thermostats or whatever. And I'm not picking on any manufacturer. Those are just the examples of the consumer devices that are getting, rolled out amongst people's homes. And if you take the average house that maybe has a small family and look at the number of devices that are connected, it's starting to bump up into the, high teens and into the 20s as far as number of actual devices. And as soon as refrigerators get IP addresses, everyone will be using those as well. So, but if you think about every one of those devices can be marshaled, can be utilized in an attack, that's a huge challenge. So, of course, we think it's obviously good practice to have people manage their passwords and updating of those devices. And if there's any software involved, doing that, having a firewall in your home, those are all just good common sense practices. But not everybody necessarily utilizes those across the board. And so those billions and billions of devices that are out there are potentially able to be used in attacks. And that's what generates some of the stuff we were just talking about a second ago. Yeah. So that's what we, again, have to kind of contend with. And as a provider, again, on a global level, we really have to make sure we have the infrastructure and the tools and the expertise. I mean, our network security team has been doing their job with us for many, many, many years. And that experience, that know-how that they've learned over time is a very important part of what we bring to the table for a customer and just for managing the network and protecting it.
Talk about the challenges. Security is obviously a huge one. What other challenges do you perceive that are facing, the carriers today, or let's say in the next 3 to 5 years? What do you think are going to be the main challenges that come to the forefront?
I think outside of security, I think there are, probably the biggest challenge is just continuing to manage growth. People have continued to utilize the internet, not only just for fun, enjoyable things at home, but from a business perspective. IoT, there's a huge amount of business-driven applications around IoT. Those are only going to grow. I think you're going to see more and more utilization of bandwidth around things like AR and VR applications, both consumer-driven as well as business-driven, and that's going to drive large amounts of bandwidth as well. So really just growing that and scaling that in a way that allows us to provide a quality service to a customer wherever they're at in the world is a big challenge in general terms. There are a lot of elements to that from a hardware perspective, automation, all of the components of actually running the network. And so, we just have to continue to focus on those things. And again, in many cases, we've had good success with those in the past, but you can't rest on your laurels, as it were. And we have to continue to kind of focus and drive those things forward as well.
Michael, thank you very much for joining us on Capacity TV. Pleasure to have you.
Thanks very much.